Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Corporate Finance online classes. This is Dr. Mahesh M. Manjeri, Assistant Professor from Department of Management Studies, SDM College of Engineering and Technology, Dharwad. Dear students, now we are into unit number 5, and we are learning about the second major decisions made by a finance manager, that is financing decisions. So related to financing decisions, we have already learned the concept of leverages in chapter number 18. And we have moved on to chapter number 20, where we are learning about the capital structure design decisions. So let me share the PowerPoint slide and take a quick recap of what we have learned so far. And then let me continue with the remaining part. So dear students, can you see the PowerPoint slide?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So we first learned about what is the capital structure. It refers to the debt and equity ratio in the total capital of the company. Okay, for simple words to understand. Then we learned about the designing capital structure. So this is the decision of a finance manager to decide what proportion of debt and equity capital should be there in the total capital. Okay, we have understood the consequences also. Okay, the consequences of different proportions of debt and equity in the total capital through EBIT EPS analysis we have learned. Please remember. So that is the decision made by a finance manager. So if you really want to get into finance field, these are the basic concepts which you should be thorough about. Anybody asked, okay, during a group discussion or interview, you should be able to explain these concepts, okay, very fluently and confidently. Otherwise, there is no future in finance for MBA students. Please remember. Then we were here. When a finance manager is planning to make a decision on capital structure of the company, that is, in which proportion, okay, capital is to be raised from debt and equity. Okay, he has to consider, the finance manager has to consider these factors, because these factors directly or indirectly have an influence on the design of a capital structure of a firm. Design, when you say, please remember the proportion of debt and equity in the total capital. So in today's class, we are going to make a beginning to understand what are these factors and how they influence the capital design decisions, capital structure design decisions. Okay, so with that, let's just read it out. The 10 factors: profitability, liquidity. Okay, so these are profitability of the company, liquidity of the company, control. So this is about management control. Okay, then the leverage ratios in the industry, nature of industry, consultation with investment bankers or lenders, commercial strategy, timing. Timing means timing of raising the capital, company characteristics, tax planning. Okay, so let's begin with the first factor that influences capital design structure, capital design decisions. Capital structure design decisions. The first factor that influences capital structure design decisions is profitability. Okay, so far, okay, we have understood this much, that what is profitability of a company. Okay, so if you can recall the EBIT EPS analysis, that is earnings before interest and tax, earnings per share, EBIT EPS analysis, which I already learned the concept as well as solved 2 case studies or discussed 2 case studies. So just would like to remind that EBIT EPS is a method to study the effect of leverage that essentially involves comparison of alternative methods of financing under various assumptions of EBIT. These are the 2 case studies we have solved also. The choice of financing mix would be one, given the level of EBIT, would ensure the highest earning per share. So in our both the case studies, we chose that financial plan which ensured highest EPS or earning per share. So remember. So we already know about what is leverage. That is employment of a source of funds for which the firm has to pay a fixed cost. That is a debenture capital or term loan capital is termed as leverage. Okay. So the finance manager has to choose that financing plan. The financial manager has to choose that financial plan that maximizes highest earning per share. Because when a company's earning per share are highest, that means it maximizes wealth of the shareholders. Okay, that is the profitability aspect. Okay, so that is the first factor. So what the summary of first factor? The finance manager should consider that financial plan which ensures highest earning per share for its shareholders. What does that mean? It means it ensures maximization of shareholders' wealth. So in this way, profitability influences the capital structure design decisions. Okay, so I'll consider 3, then I'll go for your questions if any. The second aspect, which influences capital structure design decisions. Please remember always, never forget, when it speak the term capital structure design decisions means the proportion of debt and equity in the total capital while raising the capital. The second is how liquidity affects or influences the capital structure design decisions, or how liquidity influences the debt equity ratio in the total capital. Cash flow analysis. If we consider the cash flow analysis, see, we have already considered cash flows. We have estimated cash flows in unit number 2, investment decisions. If you can recall, we estimated cash flows of project proposals. So liquidity position of a firm is analyzed by cash flow analysis that we did in unit 2. One measure relates to the ratio of fixed financial charges to net cash inflows. A firm can afford higher debt if the ratio is high. If the cash inflows are much more higher than the fixed financial charges, in simple terms, interest on loan. One very simple example I would like to take. One fixed financial charge is interest on loan. If we can recall, we deducted interest before calculating the net cash inflows. So if the cash inflows of the company are sufficiently larger or higher than the fixed financial charges, then the firm can afford higher debt. What does it mean? If the estimated cash inflows of a company are much more higher, it means the company can increase the proportion of debt capital in the total capital. And another measure to determine the adequacy of cash flows to meet the fixed obligations is cash budget. So what is the cash budget? A cash budget is an estimation of the cash inflows and outflows for a business over a specific period of time. This budget is used to assess whether the entity has sufficient cash to operate or not. So if through the cash budget, if it is determined that the entity means the firm or company has sufficient cash to operate, in that case, the company can borrow more debt. What does it mean? It means the proportion of the debt in the total capital can be higher. Okay. Now, can I ask you a question? Why the company tries to raise capital through debt sources like issue of debentures or through term loans? Term loan means long-term loan. Though it increases the risk of the firm, but still, why companies try to raise capital through sources like debentures or long-term loans? Yes, who will answer?
Sir, for interest, sir.
Continue. Now, sentence doesn't make any sentence meaning. Can you explain it?
Sir, if they raise capital in the form of loans, then they can earn interest also.
They can? If the company raises capital through long-term loan, they can what? Complete the sentence. Yes, what happened? Your voice broke in between. I couldn't hear the last 2 or 3 words.
Am I audible, sir?
Now you are audible. Please tell.
Sir, if they raise capital through loans means they can earn interest also, sir.
They can earn means company can earn interest.
Yes, sir.
Oh my God. See, dear students, these are basics. A, B, C, D is 1, 2, 3, 4. You are going wrong. Like in accountancy, you can go wrong with debit or credit. If a company borrows, okay, debt capital or raises debt capital means raising capital by way of taking a loan from a bank or raising debt capital by way of issue of debentures, company will not earn interest. Company has to pay interest. Shilpa, you understood? Company has to pay interest. It will not earn interest.
Yes, sir. I know, sir, but I confused.
Okay. So anybody else? Why still companies go ahead and raise capital from a debt source? Okay, it is because the presence of fixed cost sources of funds, okay, brings in leverage, which we learned just in the previous chapter. And what is the significance of presence of leverage? Okay, when there is a fixed cost sources of finance in the total capital structure, okay, I gave you 1% change in sales will lead to a much more increase. Okay, the earning per share of the company will increase by more than 1%. But only thing, the sales should be increasing positively. If the sales of a company increase by 1%, the increase in earning per share will be more than 1% in the presence of fixed cost sources of finance. That is the reason why, okay, the companies try to raise capital even from debt sources. That is the first reason. Second reason, debt capital, borrowed capital is cheaper than owner's capital. Equity capital is owner's capital. Okay, so if you take a loan from a bank, let's say 10 lakh rupees, or you invest your own 10 lakh rupees in starting a business, which is more risky? Hello students. You want to start a business, you spend your own 10 lakh, you invest your own 10 lakh rupees from your pocket, or you take a loan from the bank. Which is cheaper? Which is beneficial?
Owned money, sir.
Again, ulta.
Sir,
See, if your business
loans,
if your business goes into loss, you will lose all 10 lakh rupees. You will be bankrupt. You will come on road. If you borrow from a bank, bank will only seize the assets of the company. Your liability will be only for the business. Understood? You won't be jailed. Company will seize your business and they will sell all the assets, and whatever money remains, they will try to recover the loan money from that assets of the company. Your liability will be only limited to the business. Okay, so these are the two reasons why a company tries to raise capital through debt source. Okay, a cash budget should be prepared for a range of possible cash inflows with a probability attached to each of them. Since the probability of various cash flow pattern is known, since we estimate, as I told you, we estimated the cash inflows for different types of investment proposal, single proposal, mutually exclusive, and replacement project. Since the probability of various cash flow pattern is known, the firm can determine the level of debt it can employ and still remain within an insolvency limit tolerable to the management. So when the company prepares a cash budget is nothing but an estimation of the cash inflows and outflows. It is again also not alien. We have already calculated, okay, it in unit number 2, capital budgeting. We estimated the cash flow pattern, inflows as well as outflows for single proposal, replacement proposal, and mutually exclusive. When we do that, what the management will come to know? So whether, okay, how much capital we can borrow through debt source, repayment of principal as well as interest, to what extent it is possible. To that extent, they can raise capital from debt sources. The impact of alternative debt policies should also be examined under adverse circumstances or recession conditions. See what estimations we made in our examples, mostly for 5 years. There, in theory, we did not consider what if there will be a recession. Think about a company which estimated its cash inflows and outflows, okay, for the years 2017-18, 18-19, 19-20, 2021, and 21-22. Okay, 2017-18, 18-19, okay, 19-20 even let us consider. There are no problem. But 2021 and 21-22, okay, the market has gone into deep recession. There is a crisis. So, but in theory, we don't consider those adverse effects. Okay. So what it says, the impact of alternative debt policy should also be examined under adverse circumstances like recession. Okay, this is a precaution, that's it. Then the third factor that has influence on the capital structure design decisions, or the third factor that can influence the proportion of debt and equity in the total capital is control. Control, when we say management control. So please try to understand, equity shareholders are the true owners of the company. So if the proportion of the equity capital is very high in the total capital, the management will be in the hands of the equity, the control will be in the hands of the equity shareholders. And there will be little control with the management or board of directors. But if the company has a higher proportion of debt capital, okay, it means the equity shareholders will have less control over the decision making. So that means the management or a board of directors will have greater control in making the decisions. With this background, let me explain the points. Another consideration in planning the types of funds to use, that is the debt capital or equity capital, is the attitude of management towards control. Management here is the board of directors. For example, lenders have no direct voice in the management of a company. Like if banks that provide long-term loans, financial institutions that provide long-term loans, or debenture holders, okay, they do not have direct voice in the management of a company. Remember, only equity shareholders have the right to vote for board of directors. For all practical purposes, they have very little say in the policy decisions of the company or in the selection of board of directors. That is why I said, if the company raises capital, a greater proportion of the capital is raised through debt sources, equity shareholders will have lesser control, hence the management will have a greater control. So it is all about the attitude of the management, whether they want to give up control or they want to gain more control in policy decisions. Likewise, the preference shareholders do not have the right to vote for the appointment of board of directors. So debt sources of capital as well as the preference share capital together, if the company has a higher proportion, the control will be more with the management and less with equity shareholders. Accordingly, if the main object of the management is to retain control, they will like to have a greater proportion of the debt and preference shares in the additional capital requirements. That is additional when they want to raise additional capital. Okay. So any queries now? I'll pause here. So related to first factor, profitability, second factor, liquidity, and third factor, control. How these factors have an influence on debt and equity proportion in the total capital. Any doubts, any questions you have, please ask. Yeah, you can at least say no so that I can go ahead. Any doubts? Any questions?
No, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Okay. Yeah, so here I'll make a new share. Yeah, students, can you see this cartoon?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I shared it in group also in today's Times of India. So it is talking about a phishing mail or message. Okay, so this man says, wow, I 1 crore rupee loan at just 2% interest. This park bench always brings luck. The other person says, calm down, greed blinds and fools your mind. This person again says, look, one click on this link and a loan on. And the other person explains, this is a case of phishing and you are being made a bait, B-A-I-T, bait. Just in yesterday's webinar, the resource person from BSc was trying to explain us where not to invest or from where not to take loan. Okay, so try to understand. Okay, the theory or the explanations that you are learning in theory, the examples that you are learning, the webinar being organized, the stock market challenge, okay, how the subject is being related to what is happening in the corporate world. Okay, so all you need is interest to learn. Okay, so I hope that you all are learning with greater interest, and with that hope, okay, let me continue with our classes. Yes, okay, before I move on to the fourth factor, let me take attendance first. Please give your attendance. Starting with Abhijit.
Yes, sir.
Abhishek.
Present, sir.
Align.
Present, sir.
Amrut. Anagha.
Present, sir.
Anusha Kautekar.
Present, sir.
Anusha Achari.
Present, sir.
Anushri. Anushri absent. Ashwini.
Present, sir.
Asra.
Yes, sir.
Swati.
Present, sir.
Balappa. Absent.
Sir,
Balappa present. Okay.
is present, sir.
Yes. Thank you. Bharti.
Present, sir.
Chinmay.
Present, sir.
Deepa.
Present, sir.
Dodbasaya. Absent. Ganesh. Absent. Iranna.
Yes, sir.
Srikanth. Absent. Karthik. Absent. Lakshmikant.
Yes, sir.
Manjula.
Sir, Karthik present. Sir.
Karthik is present. Next,
Yes,
Manjula. Sorry, absent?
Sir, Manjula present, sir.
Present. Yes. Manjunath,
Present, sir.
Muttava.
Sir.
Present, sir.
Yeah, who spoke? Some boy spoke in between.
Manjunath, sir.
Manjunath is marked present. Then
Thank you, sir.
Nagamegha. Absent. Nagraj. Who is present?
Nagamegha.
Nagamegha is present. Okay. The Nagraj is absent. The Nagashri is present.
Sir, Dodda Basaya, sir.
Dodda Basaya. Sakshi.
She is present, sir.
Thank you. Pawan.
Present, sir.
Pavitra.
Present, sir.
Pooja Ballari. Pooja Ballari is present or absent? Pooja GN.
Present, sir.
Pooja Kadam.
Present, sir.
Purna.
Present, sir.
Pradnya.
Present, sir.
Praveen. Puneet. Rakesh. Ruchita.
Yes, sir.
Keshav. Keshav is also not there. Okay. Sahana.
Yes, sir.
Samiksha.
Present, sir.
Sanjana.
Present, sir.
Sankalp. Sanket Kumar. Shilpa MN.
Present, sir.
Shilpa Ganji. Absent. Shiva Kumar.
Sir, he is present, sir.
Yes, present. Then Shruti.
Present, sir.
Saurabh.
Present, sir.
Rujana.
Sir, Shivkumar. Sir,
Yes,
Shivkumar
Shiva
present,
Kumar
sir.
is marked present. Saurabh
Okay.
is present. Then Srujana.
Yes,
Thank you.
sir.
Suman.
Present, sir.
Sumukh.
Yes, sir.
Sushmita.
Yes, sir.
Swati. Swati Pola.
Present,
Tabassum.
sir.
Yeah, present. Tabassum.
Sir.
Uday Kumar.
He is present, sir.
Yes, thank you. Vaishnavi. Absent. Varsha.
Present, sir.
Vedesh.
Sir.
Nishad.
Sir, Nagaraj present, sir.
Now those who have skipped their attendance can give. One is Nagaraj.
Karthik present, sir.
Nagaraj, after that Karthik. Karthik, yeah, marked present. Other students who skipped attendance.
Shivkumar.
Sorry,
Anushri and Pooja Ballari.
Anushri and Pooja Ballari. Anushri.
Swati, sir.
Yeah, 1 minute. Anushri and Pooja Ballari.
Swati Pola, sir.
Then
Swati
Swati Pola. Okay, marked present. Yes. Next.
Shivkumar.
Shiv Kumar is also marked present.
Pradnya, sir.
Pradnya. Okay, Pradnya is also marked present. Anybody else remaining?
Sir,
Sahana, sir.
Sahana. Sahana is also marked present. Yes. Next. Anybody else? Okay. So attendance is over now. And then let us continue with our PowerPoint slides. Okay, students, can you see these PowerPoint slides?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So the fourth factor that influences the capital structure design decisions, okay, is leverage ratios for other firms in the industry. Now we already know what is the leverage. Okay, a whole chapter is studied, numericals were solved as well as case study was discussed. Yet another approach to the capital structure decisions is to make a comparison with the debt equity ratios of companies belonging to the same industry having a similar business risk. For example, if ITC is planning to raise additional capital, they can consider the debt equity ratio of Hindustan Unilever Limited or Procter & Gamble Limited or Reckitt Benckiser Limited. These all are FMCG companies. Okay, same way, if Coca-Cola is planning to raise additional capital, they can consider the debt equity ratio of PepsiCo. So like this. So what is the rationale while planning to raise additional capital? At that point in time, consider the debt equity ratio of the competitors in the same industry. Why the company should do it? What is the objective? What is the rationale? That debt equity ratio is appropriate for other firms in a similar line of business should be also appropriate for the company as well. If Coca-Cola has raised capital in a particular debt equity proportion, it may be also suitable for PepsiCo. If Hindustan Unilever Limited has raised capital in certain debt equity proportion, it may be also suitable for Reckitt Benckiser company. Okay, because both operate in the same industry. The macro environmental forces that are faced by both the companies are to the greater extent same. That is the rationale. Industry standards provide a useful benchmark if the firm is out of line. Okay, say for example, if ITC company is planning to raise additional capital, and when they consider the debt equity proportion of Hindustan Unilever Limited, ITC company can understand whether their debt equity ratio is more or less similar to other companies in the industry or have they deviated. Note, okay, with that observation, they can correct their debt equity proportion. Okay. Yeah, I think less than a minute is remaining. So I think I will continue, and once the meeting ends, you need to join back the same meeting. I hope you know, okay, how to do it. And this does not necessarily imply that the firm's capital structure planning is inappropriate. Just in case, we'll consider companies A, B, and C. Company C is planning to raise additional capital, and they refer to the debt equity ratio of companies A and B. And what the company finds that, okay, company C's debt equity ratio is far different than the debt equity ratio of companies A and B. That does not necessarily imply that the firm's capital structure planning is inappropriate. Why company A and B's debt equity ratio are different? Okay, there are certain reasons. It may well be possible that other firms may not be using appropriate debt equity ratio. So blindly, you cannot follow the debt